future for the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose, and profit. I'm Swanette, and I'm your host. Welcome to my podcast, Holistic Creators. My name is Swanette, and I'm your host. Today, I have this incredible guy with me, JG. And what does an award-winning entrepreneur, a TEDx speaker, a bacon-atarian, that's a vegetarian who still eats bacon, a funky soccer lover, and I've seen some of them, a former rapper who opened for the Wu-Tang Clan, yes, really, and a previous 362-pound man who has since lost over 130 pounds despite his affinity of bacon, have in common. They are all the same guy. JG Goldberg. So we're really doing this third person here. Is an international Edu-tainer, author of the first international best-selling Prison Break, and creator of the Playful prosperity and competition-proof business immersion programs. He has been a featured expert on media outlets, including ABC, CBS, and Fox, as well as teaching on the Mindvalley and SoulPancake platforms, and creating a business in partnership with NASA and the Space Shuttle program while earning his MBA. Now JG focuses on blending his signature mix of simple and transformational wisdom, practical business mentorship, and belly-busting humor to help coaches, speakers, and online educators building competition-proof businesses full of impact and influence, and have a ton of fun in the process. As a sought-after international speaker and host, JG has shared the stage with some of the world's greatest thought leaders and innovators in human potential and performance, including Jason Silver, Dr. Cian Stevenson, Don Miguel Ruiz, Vishen Lakhiani, Stephen Kotler, Maria Pierce, and so many others. And today, this incredible guy is on my show. Wow!
Well, thank you. I apologize to everybody ahead of time that they had to endure all of that. I really got to come up with a new bio that just says, "Hi, I'm Jason." Done. That's the end.
Yeah, but this is an incredible story. So, as I'm following you for a long time on the social media, and I'm always inspired by your live sessions and what you share about your journey, and you're really open to tell people what your journey has been. Yeah. So you said that you have been this overweight guy, and this is really, yeah, 332 pounds is really overweight.
Yeah.
So how did it come to this situation that you gained weight and like you were on the one hand physical overweight, but I think you were also emotionally overweight? Have there been signs before you got to this huge amount of weight that you have been ignored or that you didn't catch up? And yeah, what was this, how can I say, catalyst moment when the universe jumped in and said, okay, now is enough? And can you tell a little bit more about the story or what happened?
Yeah, it's something where I think, like anything in our lives that ends up being not the best experience of our lives, or things like gaining weight or hating your job or whatever. There's never like a day where like I didn't go to bed in perfect shape and then wake up the next day 332 pounds, right? It's like these small little incremental things over time. And for me, my physical weight challenges started very early on in life. When I was kind of always the chubby kid. And a lot of people kind of outgrow the chubby kid when they get older. They call it baby fat, Yeah. And you stretch out. And even me, like I got taller. I mean, I'm 6'1". I was getting taller and taller, but the weight just kept coming on as well. And so, yeah, it just started from a very young age. I was raised by a single mother, and I'm an only child, so it was just the two of us. And she wasn't big on cooking. First of all, she wasn't big on cooking, but also second of all, she worked a lot. And so if you work a lot and you're not big on cooking and you have to feed a child, you got to go sometimes for ease and convenience over health, right? And so at least that was the way she approached it. And so we had a lot of like fast food and pizza, and we celebrated with food. And if we were sad, we ate food. And if we were bored, we ate food. And food was kind of like the answer for everything emotionally. And so over time, I just kept getting, bigger and bigger. I didn't have any kind of any movement in my life. I wasn't in any sports. I didn't play outside and like go run around and do things. I was much more of like a video game and TV kind of person. And so, yeah, it just kept creeping up to the point where I was 332 pounds in my late 20s. And I knew, Swanette, it wasn't like, a lot of people say they have these like wake up calls where like, this is the day where I realized something had to change. I knew something had to change forever. I just didn't know what to do. I feel like I had tried all these things and they didn't work. And then I would just feel even more depressed and more stressed and beat myself up even more that I wasn't losing the weight. And I tried, my mom tried bribing me when I was younger, and we tried every diet you could think of, and nothing worked. But the day that it really, the day that it became something that I couldn't run away from anymore was the story that I talk about in Prison Break in my book. And it was this day in 2009. So I was in my late 20s at the time. This is when I was still in my corporate job. I hadn't left to become an entrepreneur yet. That didn't happen for a couple more years. And I went to go make a purchase on Amazon. I was sitting in my office at work, and this is when I was in IT still. So I was the director of engineering and operations for a technology consulting firm. And I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm on Amazon, and I go to try to buy some socks, some funky socks, as you mentioned. I tried to buy some funky socks that I really liked. And my credit card got declined. And it didn't make any sense to me because I was making well over 6 figures, and this little order of socks, I know I had enough money in the bank to cover an order of socks. And so I got really, really angry, really upset, because back then I got really, really angry and really, really upset about everything. And I called my bank, and I'm basically yelling at the bank saying, like, what is going on? Why is my card not working? What's happening? And the bank's response to me was that it looked like there was some potentially fraudulent activity on my account. And so they had cut off my card to make sure that somebody wasn't going to steal more of my money. And so when I demanded to know what were these fraudulent charges, what were these things on my account that you guys flagged as being suspicious, the answer was that there had been 4 fast food transactions in one day in the city where I lived. And they assumed there's no way somebody would eat at 4 fast food restaurants in one day. It must be that somebody stole the card and they were testing it by making small purchases before going to try to make a bigger purchase. And of course, it wasn't somebody who had stolen my card. I literally had 4 different meals in one day from fast food restaurants. And for whatever reason, when that was reflected back to me, that all the warnings, all the insight, all the times that I knew something needed to change, that there was a wake-up call there and I didn't follow it, this was the one time that it happened where I could not run away from it. I could not blame it on somebody else. Like for some reason, it just really hit me in that moment that something has got to change. If it gets to a point where a bank cuts you off from your own money because of your food choices, that is a problem. And so that became, as I say in the book, the day the universe cut me off. I feel like that was a spiritual intervention. And that started my journey of personal growth, of health, of weight loss. And as you mentioned, not just physical weight loss, but the emotional weight loss, the mental weight loss, all the other kinds of weight that all of us carry around in some form or another in our lives.
Yeah, yeah. So all the time before, like food was a kind of coping strategy for feeling better or getting rid of some problems or feeling connected to your mother. And so how did you overcome this coping strategy? So what have you done?
Yeah, so I mean, it always sounds cliche, I think, when people say this, but it is in part a mindset change. It has to be. It can't just be a behavioral change, because behavioral changes alone don't stick. If behavioral change is all we're doing and we don't change the mindset, then we're constantly having to force ourselves or will ourselves to do the behavioral change. But if we have a belief shift about what it is we're doing, if we change our relationship to things like food, or a relationship to things like stress or anxiety, or a relationship to things like exercise and movement, then it's the identity that we have shifts, and then we take the action of the person who has that identity. So for me, it was a mix of doing a lot of inner work to really start changing that. And from a more practical standpoint, I had to change all of my, the way I was eating, and stop consuming fast food, stop consuming sodas, stop consuming so much sugar and packaged foods and things like that, processed foods. And then I use the tool of bariatric surgery to help me also to lose the physical weight. And so that is one of those things where bariatric surgery is an incredible tool if you're at a dangerous level of obesity, which I was morbidly obese and in a very dangerous range with my BMI and my body fat percentage. And they didn't want me to, die of a heart attack before I was 40 or 50 years old. And so the tool of bariatric surgery is a great tool to jumpstart things. But if you don't change your relationship to food and movement and all these other things, not only will you not be as successful losing the weight, but you can put it all back on. It is not a silver bullet where when you get the surgery, now you're like skinny for life. No, you have to work and you can gain it all back. So I did both of those things in conjunction, the practical part, the outer world part of having the surgery, but also the inner world part of changing my relationship to food and movement and all those things.
Yeah. So it is really that you changed your mindset about this topic. And you said in another interview that it is first about changing the being, who you are, and then you go into the doing, what you have to change, like changing the behavior. Can you give me a little bit more, or our audience, about this idea behind all this concept?
Yeah, it's typically, again, common knowledge that if you just change your behavior, if you just go to the gym, then you'll lose weight, or if you just stop eating so many calories, you'll lose weight. And while that may be true from a scientific standpoint, that leaves out the human element of it. And if we are going to make progress on anything we want to do, whether it's health or business or relationships or whatever it is, there has to be a fundamental shift in how we show up to the world and how we relate to the world. And so when I talk about focusing on your being, it's asking myself, who would I need to be so that these things that I want to create don't seem foreign, they don't seem hard, they don't seem unattainable. Who would I need to be? And an easy way to kind of look at that is like, if you look at somebody else who has done this, right? Or who you feel has done this, or you feel is really great at managing food stuff or health stuff or mind stuff or whatever it is, what is it about the way they show up to challenges that you could adopt, that you could step into as well? And so for me, I know when I'm at my best, and I have a list of like who I need to be list, right? And it's not me like I'm not enough and so I need to be somebody else. It's like it's the qualities I must embody in order for life to work better. And so for me, a lot of that is like playful, right? Like making sure that I'm bringing a spirit of play to what I'm doing. Unattached to outcomes. Like I know as soon as I get attached to an outcome, all the stress starts coming up in my body. And even if I know exactly what to do to get to an outcome, like I know step 1, step 2, step 3, getting myself to do those things or doing them to a level of excellence will be so much harder because I'm trying to force, right? So instead of I say I'm unattached to outcomes, if I show up and who I'm being is somebody who is not attached to outcomes, then I see the 3 things that I need to do in front of me, and it's much easier to get myself to do those things because I'm not putting so much significance on it. So yeah, so playfulness, enthusiasm, joy, unattached to outcomes, relaxed, creative, like all these things that I know that when I'm at my best, this is the way I'm showing up in life. And so when I show up that way, it just makes it easier for me to have the doing occur going forward.
You see that when you're in this energy, like being in the best way you can, the synchronicities appear and situations appear that makes it more easy to fulfill what you want to realize or manifest.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. How could I figure out what would be my qualities to be in the best being I can be, in my full identity, or however you call that?
Yeah. The good thing about this is that, success leaves clues. And so anything you've been successful at in the past, there were probably some elements of that you don't want to bring with you. There's a lot of people who will look at their successes and say, oh, well, the way I was successful is I worked 20 hours a day. Well, that may not be a quality we want to bring. And anyways, that's a doing thing anyways. That's kind of an obsessive trait. And we don't necessarily want to bring that forward unless it serves you, right? And this is the thing that I always want to be mindful of, is that like, I don't like to do right or wrong or good or bad. I like to think about less effective versus more effective, or less productive versus more productive. If it is effective for you, if you feel good, if you feel alive, if you feel connected, if you feel present, working 20 hours a day, I'm not going to tell you not to do that. Now, health-wise, it's probably not a good idea, but I'm not going to tell you not to do that. But my guess is most people that are working 20 hours a day are not saying, man, I feel so alive. I still feel so refreshed. I feel so energetic. I don't think they feel that way. So I say all that to say, look back at when you were successful in anything. It doesn't matter, no matter how big or small. Let's say you got a new job, or you moved across the country, or you got married, or you lost some weight, or whatever it is. Look at what you've done, and there was some way that you were showing up in those things, in those moments. Those are your core states of being, that when you are being that person, you have a higher likelihood of success, right? So if you look at something like, what's something you're really proud of that you've created, Swanette?
Wow, a good question. I think I'm proud that I can create deep connections to people. So when I'm in my coaching business, I really feel that people can open up totally, that I can connect with my heart to them, and that they feel safe sharing the deepest feelings they have and experiences they had, even if they sometimes tell me, I never told anybody before about this, but yeah, I trust you so much that I can tell you about this, and I'm sure that you can help me. And even if it's sometimes for other people like woo-woo stuff, they still go this way with me and trust me that I can hold the process. So I think this is what I'm really proud of, yeah.
I love that. So if you look at that and without even doing much digging at all, what I see on the surface, and you tell me if you feel that this is accurate for you, in order for you to be able to create that kind of space for people to have that kind of transformation and trust you in that way, who you are being when you get in those conversations, I would guess, is a mix of judgment-free, of hyper-present, of super loving, of hyper connected. Like those are things, right, for you. So for me, do those feel real for you? Do those feel accurate?
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Yeah. So then, as you're showing up and doing different things in the world, if you say to yourself, okay, who do I need to be successful in this thing? Well, I know in the past when I showed up judgment-free from a place of presence and loving and connectedness, things tend to work out for me. Great. Then show up that way with everything. Show up with that way in the podcast. Show up that way when you have a hard conversation with your partner. Show up that way when you want to create a piece of content for social media. Like you're getting all the ways of who you need to be successful.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for giving me this insight.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. So often I feel you're serving especially coaches and entrepreneurs. So often they are kind of labeling themselves like I'm the coach or I'm the teacher, etc. But they don't come to this core experience, how they can show up that they are outstanding, so that they are not one of the others that have the same teaching or that have the same topic as a coach. So do you see that this is important to really figure out the essence of who we are?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think it's even less about figuring it out and more about remembering it, because I think what happens so much, and this started off as a shadow and now it's becoming a gift. I believe that every part of everything has a shadow side and a gift side. And this started off as a shadow and now it's become a gift. The people who historically have been very successful in this field, in coaching, personal growth, teaching, anything around, spirituality or human optimization, human flourishing, whatever you want to call it, self-help. They have had this kind of designation of the sage on the stage, right? Like the all-knowing, almighty, master, omnipotent, their poop smells like roses. They never have a bad day. Everything is perfect in their lives. They're very, very polished. Everything is very, very, it's a beautiful presentation of what a flawless human looks like. And when that first started, the reason it was powerful, it was a gift when it first started, is because people needed inspiration, right? People felt down, they felt sad, or they just wanted to do more. And so seeing somebody that was that beautiful and that polished, for some, it was inspirational. Like, oh man, that person's amazing. Maybe one day I could be as good as them, right? And that's kind of how the whole industry started. And where that became a shadow was that over time, what that actually created was more and more disconnection for people between themselves and who they thought they were able to be. Because the more and more these sages on the stage grew, the less and less they were relatable to a normal person. So when I'm sitting here saying, shit, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent this month, or like, I don't know how I'm going to feed my kids. And then you have, you know, somebody like Tony Robbins, and this is not about Tony Robbins. I just picked him because he's one of the biggest figures. And you see him just having this huge life of abundance. Some people would say like, I can't relate to that. It's so far from where I am. I can't even see one step in front of me, let alone this amazing, perfect life I could have. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's just self-actualization is so far away from me. So what started to occur, the shift that started to occur, this is a recent shift, relatively recent, and this is going back to your question, is that what people want now is not sensational, they want relatable, right? They don't want inspirational, they want aspirational. Because inspirational is, I'm at the top of the mountain, maybe one day if you figure your crap out, you can meet me up here. That's inspirational. Whereas aspirational says, listen, I'm still climbing this mountain. In fact, last week while climbing, my hand slipped and I actually went down a few notches on the rock, but I woke up again and I'm going to start climbing again. And I want you to come alongside with me because I was just climbing the rock that you were climbing last week or last month or last year or last whatever. And I know what that feels like. And here's how it showed up for me when I was trying to climb the rock and it was hard for me. And you start sharing these things about yourself and people go, oh, wow, that's a normal person. So if that normal person is not extraordinary, they're not special, then maybe there's a chance for me after all. And so that is why I'm so intent on having people really share themselves. And it's not just about sharing your struggles. Like, and this is a big thing we get into with people that they have no idea why they would do this. And I tell them just do it anyways, is sharing your personality, sharing your quirks, sharing your humanity. Like, I can't tell you how many times per year I get tagged in posts on Facebook about funky socks and about bacon, right? It's just a part of what I love and it's a part of what I share through my message. And so when people see socks, funky socks or bacon, they think of me as if they think of a friend who loves funky socks and bacon. And when you feel that level of rapport, when you feel that level of relatability and accessibility, people have a lowered resistance to what it is you have to say. They don't feel like you're wagging your finger at them. They feel like you're somebody who actually cares and wants them to succeed. So in a very long answer to a very short question, that's why I think it's so important for us to really remember who we are, not try to be something that we think we're meant to be because that's what the sages on the stage look like, but remember who we are. Because when we remember who we are at our core, at our essence, that's the reason our friends love us. That's the reason our family loves us. That's the reason strangers feel connected to us. Why would we do anything different than just be that?
Yeah, so I can see this. Often there are these coaches or teachers that look like being a guru. So they are really high and people look up to them and think, wow, this is amazing what he created, but I will never make it. Who am I that I can do something so important and be so impressive for others or inspiring for others? So yeah, and this is kind of a feeling I sometimes still have. Yeah, so how can I do this? Yeah, who am I? But on the other hand, I'm also able to show myself being vulnerable. So I think this is also important, that even we coaches, teachers, mentors are still in our process. So what about you? Are you always like in this good mood, being playful and
No, oh, not at all. And that's the funny thing is like I'm actually trying to share this more. I do a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews, and I'm trying to share it more because, you know, people see, I actually just posted something on Instagram the other day about this. People see me and I'm literally known as like the joy guy, the play guy. Like you said, Playful Prosperity was like my first big course. And sometimes it can feel like, because that's what people expect of me, then I can't show up in the darker places. I can't show up in the down places. And I've struggled with that because, and it wasn't so much that I didn't want to share those pieces of me. The way I used to justify it, I remember having this conversation with a friend of mine who's a coach probably 4 years ago. And she was saying the same thing, like, you know, she knows me and she knows that with the people that I trust in my inner circle, I'll share everything. I won't hold anything back, but that I wasn't sharing as much of that with my audience. And she said, you should really share more of that with your audience. And I said, listen, I have no problem sharing it from a vulnerability standpoint. I just feel like there's so many people out there doing that when people come to me, they're not coming to me for that. They want to have the joy. They come to me because they want to have the joy piece. That's why they look to me. The same way it's why people look to me. So that was what I used to think. And then I I had this experience. I'd actually never talked about this before in a podcast, but this is something that changed the perspective for me. I'm a huge fan of the TV show Scrubs. Did you ever watch the TV show Scrubs? Have you heard of it before? Okay. So I don't know how worldwide it was. It was a huge hit in the States, late 90s, I think it was, into the early 2000s. I think it was on for like 9 seasons, and great show. And it's a medical show. It's about, like, you know, these brand new doctors or whatever, and kind of like how they navigate a hospital, but it's a comedy, right? It's a silly comedy. Like, there's silly slapstick, you know, funny sound effects, people falling over, all kinds of stuff. And then in like the 3rd or 4th episode, I think it was, of the very first season, they had a guest star come on, Brendan Fraser. I don't know if you know Brendan Fraser, but big Hollywood actor. Brendan Fraser comes on, and he is the brother-in-law of one of the main doctors in the show. And it turns out that he has cancer. And for the first time ever, you have this whole different feeling in the TV show Scrubs. It's not what you're used to. It's not funny, slapstick, whatever. There's still comedy, there's still levity, but they're dealing with something real here. Somebody really cares about has cancer. There's a potential they'll die. We're seeing them show up in a way we've never seen them show up before. And in me seeing that, I said, oh, they're not going to do that all the time. That's a very small part of what they share, because people do come to them for the laughs and for the comedy. But it's okay to show them that part of the laughs and the comedy is the polarity of the sadness and the darkness. And so that has been the challenge for me, is to bring more of that in my public facing content. I do it a lot with my private clients or my group programs. With them, I share pretty much everything. But it has been a thing now where I've gotten more and more into sharing what it is my vulnerability is, because I have struggled with anxiety and depression since I was a teenager. And it's not something that's ever gone away from me. It's just something that I've learned better how to navigate. And so, yeah, I am definitely not in that state all the time. And I don't want anybody to think that. I think that that's unrealistic, and it's unfair to ever hold yourself to that kind of a standard.
Mm-hmm. So have you a kind of strategy how you can come over this depression and anxiety, so that perhaps other people who have the same feeling as well can understand a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I mean, that's the majority of a lot of the content I share is about how to manage, and not even how to manage, how to navigate, because manage feels controlling, how to navigate our thinking. And I'll tell you, I mean, there are tons of tools that I have, and obviously I wrote a whole book with stuff in there and tools and things like that. But what it really, really comes down to at the end of the day is a couple of things. Number one, it's how much significance we're putting on the thoughts that we're having in our head, right? Because when I have a thought in my head that I'm thirsty, it does not derail my day. It's totally fine. My life doesn't change. Even if I'm not able to get water for a little while because I'm driving or something, it's okay. I'm going to be all right. And I don't take that thought too seriously. I don't make it too significant. The challenge becomes when I have a thought that comes in my head that says, you're not moving fast enough. Who are you to be doing this? What if nobody signs up for this thing? What if you never find a partner? Like all these different things. If those things pop in my head and I take them seriously and I make them significant, then my body and my experience of life has no choice but to continue down that spiral, right? It's like if you go on Netflix and you watch a horror movie, Netflix algorithm says, oh, you like horror movies? Here's a bunch more horror movies, right? So if a thought comes in my head that says you're not good enough and I go, that's a true thought, then my brain goes, oh, you like that thought? That's something you like to attach to and take seriously? Here's a bunch more thoughts like that. Here's a bunch more. Yeah, the algorithm in your head will keep giving them to you. So as opposed to what a lot of people will tell you to do, and this is, again, less effective versus more effective. If this thing I'm about to say works for you, keep doing it. Don't stop doing it. But this is why sometimes for me, reframing something doesn't actually work, right? Because if I'm reframing something, but I actually still believe the opposite, then it's like if I took ketchup and I put it on my own face, and then I tried to convince myself 10 seconds later that it was blood. No matter how many times I say, it's blood, it's blood, it's blood, it's blood, I'm like, it's ketchup. I just put it on my face 10 seconds ago. I can't trick myself into changing. But if instead I can get into a place of acceptance, right? Acceptance is so huge. Acceptance doesn't mean you give up. Acceptance doesn't mean you succumb to something. But acceptance says, I am okay with the presence of this thought. I am okay with the presence of this feeling. And it doesn't have to be a relevant part of my experience of life. It can exist. I don't need to overcome it. I don't need to push it away, which is what a lot of people will try to help you do, is like, how do you overcome your negative thoughts? That's a lot of energy. And I only have so much energy every day when I wake up that I can use for good or for fighting. I don't want to spend any of my energy. Like if I wake up every morning, Swanette, with 10 like tokens in my hand, and I can use those 10 tokens throughout the day for any emotion that I want, I don't want to use 8 out of the 10 trying to manage my negative thoughts, because then I'm left with 2 tokens. And then at the end of the day, I wonder why I don't feel like I did anything productive or creative. It's because I used all my tokens trying to manage the negative stuff. Why not just use the tokens to create, to do whatever needs to be done, to be gentle on ourselves, to have compassion for ourselves? That's a great use of the tokens. And whatever is there that's kind of lingering, it will go when it's ready to go. But the more I fight it, the more I resist it, the more it fights to stay. The more I tell it, hey, listen, you can stay, you can go. Happiness and sadness, you can stay, you can go, you don't have to be here, you don't have to leave. The more I make it okay for all that stuff to be here, the more, honestly, it typically gets bored and just says, well, if you're not going to pay me attention, I'm just going to leave.
Yeah, so you feel for yourself that you can not trick yourself, like saying, okay, even if I feel bad, I now think that I'm totally fine. And it is more like shifting also the energy or going up into a higher vibration inside yourself, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one thing. So I like to use the metaphor of a hot air balloon. So a hot air balloon, you have the, the basket that you stand in, and you have obviously the huge balloon, and you have the fire, that takes the thing up. And then you have the sandbags that they put around the basket, right? To keep it on the ground. Well, if we're trying to spend all of our time reframing and doing all this stuff to kind of like push through it, then essentially what we're doing is we're pulling the lever for the fire and trying to get the hot air balloon to rise while we still have the sandbags around us. So we will probably still move up. If we work really hard, if we pull that fire for all it's worth, the balloon's going to move, but it's going to move very slowly, and it's going to use all of its energy to do that. But the balloon itself was designed to rise. It was designed to ascend naturally. We don't need to do anything crazy with the fire. We just need to have the sandbags removed from the basket. When the sandbag is removed from the basket, it takes much less effort to pull the string with the fire and get the balloon to raise. So in this metaphor, the way that we kind of get rid of the sandbags is to not put so much significance on the heaviness that we're feeling. And the more we say, oh, there's one of those thoughts again, there's one of those, there's some stress, there's some anxiety, there's some depressive thoughts, the more I can look at those and do what I call having a Britney Spears moment, where the thought pops in your head and you go, oops, I did it again. Like the thought pops in my head and I took it seriously. Oops, I did it again. Yeah. So when I can have that kind of an understanding that I'm taking this thing seriously, and that's like keeping the sandbags on the basket, then it's kind of like the sandbags are kind of just very easy to take off and just like very gently just drop off. And then the balloon starts to rise by itself.
Yeah, I totally can understand that. What I also see is that a lot of people kind of standing in this, I'm the prisoner of my life mood. Like life is happening to me. I can't change it because every time I try, this happens again. And yeah, like the sandbags, they don't throw them away, so they don't go into this self-leadership. And you wrote a lot about in this book, Prison Break. Can you tell a little bit more about how people can come into this transformation from going out of prison and to go into the state of leading their own life?
Yeah, I mean, that was my journey for the first 30 years. And when I say it was my journey for the first 30 years, I meant just to discover it, not to master it. I still have plenty of, I don't think you ever master it where it's just all the time. Back when we could travel, I was doing a lot of speaking on stages, and people would either read my book or come to me afterwards after a talk and say, I love what you said. I get the whole self-leadership thing. How do I do that 100% of the time so that nothing ever phases me? And I'm like, if you figure it out, let me know, because I have no clue. It's not something you're meant to do all the time, because it's not a personality. It's not something you're born with. It's not your eye color. It's not your height. It's not something that's like just bestowed upon you and that's just who you are. It's a moment by moment choice. And it's very, very, very easy to fall into prisoner moments, because especially now when there's so much more uncertainty than there ever has been before. There's so much more volatility. There's so much more ambiguity. There's so much more chaos. People feel like they have run out of future and run out of hope, right? It's just like looking forward to things now. It's just like looking forward to what? Like, I don't even know what the world's going to look like in 6 months or a year. So to be completely unaffected, at least initially, by circumstances would probably be a little bit sociopathic. It would probably be, you'd probably have to be heavily medicated or in a coma to not feel some sense of heaviness or pressure based on the circumstances around us. The question becomes, though, given the circumstances that are going on around us, if we can agree that life is a game, and sometimes in games, they don't feel fair. Sometimes somebody beats you in a game. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. Like if life is a game, given the conditions of the game that I'm currently playing right now, given that this is happening in politics or in the economy or with the health crisis or with the race wars or with whatever it is, or my job or my family or whatever it is, given the conditions of the game, what would I like to create? Right? How do I want to show up to these challenges? How can I bring my most creative self to the table? If I change my relationship to all these things, and they're not bad things, they just are things, right? If I don't put a label of good or bad, if they are literally all neutral, then I start to ask myself, listen, I can choose to be a prisoner in this moment. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, being a prisoner is not wrong. The key is to recognize when you are choosing to be a prisoner. Because once you realize you are choosing to be a prisoner, number one, you don't blame circumstance anymore, because you say, hey, listen, yeah, I get it. The economy is doing crazy stuff, and that doesn't affect me directly. It's not the reason why I feel sad. I am making myself feel sad because of the way I'm relating to the economy, right? Like, if you do that, you've already won. Even if you don't get into self-leader mode, that first step of just saying, yes, I'm being a prisoner right now, and I own that I chose that. That's a freaking win. Like, if you even just do that, that level of awareness is huge. But then the next step is, cool. Now that I realize I'm in this prisoner moment, if I really slow down and I really get quiet and I really think about, how would I love to feel differently in this moment? Maybe I want to feel more peaceful. Maybe I want to feel more hopeful. Maybe I want to feel more connected. Maybe I want to feel more compassionate. If I'm maybe fighting with a spouse or somebody or a boss or whatever. I want to feel 5% more of any of those things. If given all that's going on, I just want to feel that. How do I do that? When I put less significance on the things going on around me, when I don't make them the center of my world, when I instead focus on my own peace and ease being the only thing that matters. That's it. If I literally, in this moment, am I making my own peace and ease a priority? And just, I mean, keep asking yourself that question until you really get the answer. In this moment, am I making my own peace and ease my top priority? And when I do that, even as I'm saying it now, when I do that, I feel a stillness. I feel a slowness start to set in. And when I now am focused on, I only want to be peaceful, then I say, okay, from this peaceful place, given what's going on in the economy, given what's going on with my relationship, given what's going on with politics, how do I want to show up to this thing? How do I want to show up to this thing? That is self-leadership. Choosing how you're going to show up to the thing, choosing not to make it overly significant, choosing not to be a prisoner, even if it's super easy to be a prisoner in that moment.
Wow, yeah, impressive. What I see is also that we are totally in a chaos. All the systems, as you already said, are in kind of turbulence, and nobody knows what will go on and how life will show up even in the next week. So for me, it is also that if this is all in chaos, it can break down and something new can be created. And if you're in this state of being in peace with yourself, and also in the state of, I would like to create a new future that is for the humanity, and that is for sustainability and for nature, and having this holistic approach as I have. I can see that this is the best moment right now to create this kind of new way and new earth, and to stop behaving like we have done before, as we destroyed so much. So I think it is really necessary that a lot of people go out of this prison and thinking, okay, life will happen to me, and go into the state of, how can I improve can I improve the future? What can I do so that we can live in a better better way with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point, because that's a huge way to shift from having a prisoner moment to having a self-leadership moment. And again, it's not always easy in the moment. This is just what works, is to go be of service to somebody else, right? Very, very hard to be in my own crap when I'm being of service to somebody else. And we've all experienced this, right? Like I've been in this place where I'm just like upset or stressed, or business is pissing me off, or things aren't going right, or somebody on the team screwed something up, or my mom said something that triggered me, or what, and I'm just all in my crap. And then I get a phone call from a friend who says, I just found out my dad has cancer. And there's no part of me that says, well, I can't handle that right now because my mom did this and my job did this. Immediately, I'm like, oh my God, talk to me. How can I help? And all of my shit goes away. Well, how did that happen? If it's all real stuff and it's all the circumstances that are making me feel a certain way, all those circumstances are still there. And all of a sudden I shifted into loving compassion. Well, then that's proof that the circumstances don't dictate who we are or how we show up in the world, because given the ability to shift into loving compassion for somebody you care about, you do it without even thinking. So I think that's a really good example of just how capable we are to shift those states when and if we want to.
Yeah, I totally see that. So on the one hand, there are situations, experiences, even facts, or what we think are facts. And then it is how we react on that, how we interpret what is going on and how this can impact our lives. Often we are surrounded by all thoughts, or like we have our blocking beliefs because of experiences we had once in our life. And this is like the glasses we use to see even our future. Yeah. And
absolutely.
Yeah, if you ask two people being in the same situation, you get two different realities, and you think, oh, this can't be. They have been on the same party seeing this and this, or having been wherever in town, and they had this moment, and the one is describing, oh, it was so fun, it was nice and interesting people, and it was so joyful, and the other one tells you, oh, it was boring and nothing happened, and you think, they can't be at the same place, it's the same moment. Incredible, it can't.
It's so true. They even have you ever heard this story before? I haven't told it in so long, so I'll probably screw it up, but I'll make it as quick as possible. With these two twins, there's twin little boys, and they were raised by the exact same family, and one always seems super optimistic and the other one always seems super pessimistic. And so every time they get gifts, you will see they give the same gifts to both kids, and the one kid says, oh my God, a toy robot, this is so fun. And the other one goes, oh, it's a toy robot, it takes batteries, the batteries are going to die at some point, and then I won't be able to play with it anymore. And so they see that as they give the kids both the same gift, the one is always optimistic and positive, the other one's always pessimistic, is always a prisoner about it. So they say, okay, we're gonna change this all up. We're gonna test and figure out once and for all if it's really true that our one kid is this optimistic. And they give them both the gift of a huge pile of poop, a huge mountain of poop. And of course, the one pessimistic kid says, oh man, it's a whole pile of shit. What am I gonna do with this? And the optimistic kid dives in. He starts swimming around in it. And his parents say, what are you doing? He goes, there's gotta be a pony in here somewhere. So to me, this is a beautiful interpretation of, one of my mantras that I created for myself, and I try to live from it as much as possible, except for the times that I don't, is that creativity is greater than circumstance. Creativity is greater than circumstance. There's no circumstance that any of us can face that a massive level of focused creativity and love and attention at the problem, at the challenge, that it can't overcome. So if we come from a place of true creativity, there's no challenge, there's no circumstance we can face that we can't get through.
Yeah. What I also see is that I use the metaphor of this snow globe. You told in one of the interviews before, so that a lot of people are standing in this snow around them, that they even can't see what a beautiful place they are in, and they're trying to bring all this crap down, and still it is like coming up again and again. So can you share a little bit about your ideas about this snow globe?
Yeah, it's just one of the most powerful visualizations that I ever get to use, and it's it's very simple, as Swanette was saying here. It's, if you look at a snow globe and you were to shake it up, you start to see how this clear liquid inside of a beautifully clear glass gets completely covered up by stuff, by particles, where you can't even see the inside anymore. It's just white everywhere. And in our lives, when we have a lot of stressful thoughts or anxious thoughts, or there's things that are not going the way that we want them to go, it can often feel like we're standing in the middle of a snow globe that's been shaken up really hard, and then we can't see anything. We can't even see our hand in front of our face. Our entire life just feels like it's swirling out of control. And then what typical wisdom would do, it's not really wisdom, that's why I put quotes around it, but what we will typically do a lot of times is think, oh, okay, well then once I can get everything in my life under control, right? Once I can control everything in my life, then I'll be happy, then everything will be clear again. So in that example, if you wanted to take control over your life inside of a snow globe, you would think your job would be to get every single piece of snow that's flying around and put it on the ground so that you could see again. But as we're doing that, as we're running around trying to manage all the things and get all the pieces of snow, and the snow represents the boss and the company and the relationship and the kids and the wealth and the height, the weight and the health and all this stuff. As we're doing all that, we're running around and we're kicking up all the snow that we just put on the ground. And so then we wonder why all this managing and obsessive over controlling is not making us feel any more clear. And so the question becomes here, when an actual snow globe gets shaken up, what do you actually have to do for it to become clear again? Well, you just put it down. You just set it down and you stop touching it. And the natural system inside the snow globe with the liquid and gravity and physics and everything else, the snow will keep swirling for a little bit. It doesn't happen immediately. The snow will keep swirling, but as you watch it, you'll see the snow on its own without you touching it start drifting back down until it gets back down to the surface, and all of a sudden it's clear again. And so I love that as a metaphor for how our minds work and how we don't need to control every bit of our lives. But even more importantly, I use this as a quick 30-second meditation, because you can't always spend 20 minutes meditating. You can't always just stop what you're doing and go off for a half an hour and do a whole meditation. So what I like to do is, you can do this with a real snow globe if you buy one. I have several, actually. There's one right on my shelf right there. But I have a few different snow globes around my house. Probably the places I get most stressed, I store little snow globes so I can just pull them out. So I have one in my office just in case. But anyways, you shake up a snow globe, or you just shake up the snow globe in your head. You just visualize it, and you just pick a piece of snow in your head or in the actual snow globe, and you watch it. And you watch it as it swirls around, and it takes these weird twists and turns, and you're not touching it, you're not doing anything with it, you're just observing it, and you observe it and you see it floating around, and it's actually kind of beautiful. It's kind of floating in the water, and it's effortless, and it's fluid, and then it eventually hits the ground. And then you pick another piece of snow that's still swirling around, and you watch that one, and you see that one taking its own little fun, playful little path, and then eventually it gets down to the ground. And you do this with 3 or 4 pieces of snow over the course of 30 or 45 seconds, and you will feel your entire system get more calm. You will feel that peace and ease start to set in for you.
Yeah, wonderful. I think I need to buy a snow globe for myself and put it somewhere.
They're great. I have them from all over the world. I have them from like 6 different countries or something.
Yeah, you have one from Madeira?
I don't think I have one from Madeira. No, I need a Madeira one.
I will buy you some.
Amazing. Can't wait.
Yeah, so, and you started to speak about serving people. Can you tell the audience a little bit more what you're doing? So if they're interested to connect with you, what are you doing? How do you help coaches, entrepreneurs? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, what I know to be true, and thank you for asking, what I know to be true is that there are a lot of people in this world that want to do really good work, and they've gotten training, they have the skills, they have a deep desire to serve other people. They have been through their own suffering and their own challenges, and they've overcome them. I always put that in quotes because we're always a constant work in progress, but they've made real progress on that. They feel a level of transformation around certain things in their lives, and just like me and how my own transformation was, I then wanted to turn that around and help other people with the same kind of transformation. And so what I hate to see in general in life, I hate to see people suffering, but in a more specific manner here, I hate to see coaches who are well-meaning, well-intentioned, they want to do good work, they want to serve, they don't care about being famous, they don't care about being a YouTube celebrity, they just want to help people, and they can't figure out a way to do that in a way that allows them to do it as a profession, right? They can do it on the side, they can do it for free, they can do it as a hobby, but they feel like they're completely lost on how to actually do it as a business. And so what I do is I take my, 15 years of corporate experience in consulting and growing small businesses as an employee, as an executive leadership team member, and then my time in going to graduate school to getting a business degree, to getting an MBA, to starting 2 other companies, one in partnership with NASA and one as a transportation company, and then of course building my own coaching business, taking all that stuff together and saying, listen, you don't have to build the business in the way that other people may tell you have to build it. All you need to do is figure out the system that works for you. And at the core of that system, we have to bring you into the equation. Just like we were talking about earlier, we need to really be able to extract who you are so people can feel that, right? Because nowadays, social media is the way we typically connect with people. What I teach works offline as well, but especially now in COVID times, if you're not connecting with people on social media, you're not connecting with people at all. So the question becomes, how do I extract who I really am? How do I remember who I really am and extract it in the way that I show up online, extract it in the content that I create that people can start getting value from and getting served from? How do I create intimacy with people online where we have a screen and potentially thousands and thousands of miles in between us? How can it feel like we're in the same room and you feel a real intimate connection to me? That is what I help to teach coaches to be able to do so that they can connect with people more deeply, so that they can have a higher likelihood of doing this thing as an actual profession. So that's what we do. We've been doing it now for a few years. We've had over 200 people that we've worked with directly to do this. And of course, thousands and thousands more that I worked with through my partnerships with Mindvalley. And it's just been amazing to see people really step into their own and say, oh my God, this is actually something I can do. And I can do it while being me. That to me is the most amazing feedback I can get, and it's what we show up every day to help people do.
Mm-hmm. And where can people find you? So if they want to connect, you're on social media, and
yeah. No, I'm not. No, I teach social media. I hate social media. I write letters, and I have a pigeon that I connect. I tie the letter to his foot, and I send it off to people. It's terrible. Yeah. Your rent. The landlords don't like you sending checks via pigeon. No, I'm on social media. The best places to find me are on Facebook and on Instagram. Both of those I am at the Jason Goldberg, and we can continue the conversation there. I share a bunch of content, stuff that if you like this interview, you'll probably like that stuff. And send me a message. Let me know that you heard me on this podcast, and I'd love to connect with you.
Yeah, so I will put the links to your social media in the description of this podcast, so people can easily reach out to you and by just clicking the link and finding you on social media. And perhaps if they have a dove, they can send it to you.
Make sure you tell me so I can leave the window open. God forbid, I don't want the dove to hit the glass. So just let me know I'm hitting the dove so I open the window.
Yeah. So last but not least, do you have 3 tips that you can give the audience that they can use like quickly and to improve their life?
Yeah, man, there's so many things. Number 1, I will give you a tool. It's a tip/tool. It's called a PBQ. PBQ stands for prison break question. And it can be really, really helpful if you're like stuck in the mud on something. And I want to give you a very specific prison break question for a very specific thing that I think a lot of people are dealing with right now, is if you are feeling like you are sad or down or uncertain, or maybe even feeling a little bit of depression, prison break questions are essentially questions that take what feels like a problem and makes it no longer problematic. And so the format of the question is, if I knew, what would I do, right? If I knew X to be true, what would I do differently than what I'm doing now? And so if you are feeling some level of heaviness, of stress, of anxiety right now, I want you to ask yourself this prison break question. If I knew that this sadness or anxiety or whatever it is, if I knew this sadness was going to disappear on its own in exactly 10 minutes and 1 second, how would I treat myself for the next 10 minutes? If I knew magically, without me doing anything for the next 10 minutes, how would I treat myself if I knew that at 10 minutes and 1 second, it would just fly away? And the reason this tip or this tool is so powerful is because when I ask myself that question, the answer, and I listen to my heart for the answer is almost always, oh, I would be way more gentle on myself. I would stop beating myself up. I would be way more compassionate. I would be way more loving to myself. And you know what? I'll go for a walk. I'll do whatever, but I'm not going to keep beating myself up for feeling the way I'm feeling. So ask yourself that prison break question. If I knew this feeling was only going to last for the next 10 minutes, how would I treat myself for the next 10 minutes? That's the first one. Number 2, Definitely find ways to be of service, right? The number one way that you can hack a bad mood is to go do something for somebody else. What I would always do before COVID, and I can kind of do it now, but not as much, is I would go to Starbucks and I would buy a $5 gift card. Anytime I felt like down or in a bad mood, I would buy a $5 gift card. I would give it back to the cashier and I would say, it's your job. It is your duty at some point today before you get off your shift to buy somebody else's coffee for them using this $5 gift card. And they're so happy and excited that they get to be a part of that. And there's a ripple effect where I know it's going to make somebody else's day happier. And that level of feeling like I'm serving people always brings my spirits up 1,000%. And number 3 is really practicing this another one of my mantras that I really, really love and I go back to all the time is this mantra of present but irrelevant. Present but irrelevant. So when a thought or a feeling is here, acknowledge it. It's present, it's here. I'm not trying to push it away, but it also doesn't have to be a relevant experience of my life. If I'm driving down the road in my car and I'm the one driving, and in the passenger seat next to me is a person who is sad and anxious and depressed and angry, no matter what this person in the seat next to me is feeling, my car still works the same way. The steering wheel still works the same way. The gas and brake pedals, they all still work. The machine, the system still works, even if this person next to me is upset or angry or whatever it is. So if I can put that into my own life and say, even myself, if I am feeling angry, stressed, whatever it is, that doesn't have to affect how I operate the machinery of my life. I don't have to have it be a relevant part of my experience just because it's present. So present, but irrelevant.
Wow, this is so powerful. Thank you very much for being my guest in this show today and giving the audience 1 hour of inspiring thoughts. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Swan. And I so appreciate being here and I appreciate the work you're doing and I loved having the conversation.
Okay, see you soon. Bye.
Bye.